In the event that a user doesn't have any posts in their timeline, we want to recommend to them a number of users to follow, say the latest users who've signed up to the app. So assuming that those users have created posts, when our current user follows them, their posts will be added to their timeline. So they won't just see nothing, which is what we'll see if I unfollow the current user that I'm following. If I get rid of him and then flip back, I just see no posts. So now within build timeline and timeline.dart, in the condition that post.isEmpty, we want to return build users to follow, a function which will now make. And for this function, we want to return and use a stream builder. The reason for that is we want to get these users in real time as they sign up. So let's set our stream that's going to be resolved as coming from the users ref to get those users, and we want to order them by timestamp in descending order. So descending will be set to true, and let's say we want to limit it to the last 30 users in our app, and to return this as a stream we'll use the snapshots method. So now for our builder, we'll get context and snapshot. If not snapshot dot has data, we return our circular progress as always. Then we're going to create a list of type user result. And remember, user result from all the way back in our search page. So we can simply import user result from that file, and we'll make a list variable of the same name that'll be empty. Then we'll take snapshot.data.documents, which we'll get when this resolves, iterate over it with for each, and for each document we first want to deserialize the user document that we get with user.fromDocument. We'll put it in a user variable, and first of all in this list we want to remove a few things. We want to remove a recommended user to follow if the current user is in that list. So we'll make a final Boolean variable isAuthUser, where we'll check to see if the current user ID is equal to user.id. So in that case we want to remove authUser from recommended list. So if isAuthUser is true, we're going to return from our for each and not add that result to our user results list. Then another condition that we want to set is we don't want a user recommendation if we're already following that user, if that user is already in our following collection. So we can get for the current user their following off of user following, and if from our stream we're getting a user's ID that's already in the user following collection, we also want to return. So we need to fetch a user's following by executing a getFollowing function in init state, where for this function it'll be async and we'll await following ref and the document current user.id, the collection user following, and we just want to get all of those user IDs. We'll put that in a snapshot variable, and we want to set state. We want to put a following list in state that's going to consist of a list of type string. So we'll call that our following list, and we'll initialize it to an empty list, and that's going to be set to snapshot.documents map, and for each document we just want to get the document ID, so we can just say doc.document ID and say toList at the end. So now that we have our following list in state, where we're getting our user suggestions, users to follow, we want to check this list and see if the current user that we're iterating over, that's available as user, their ID is available as user.id, if it's within our following list. So to check for that, we can add an else if and add another variable, another final variable, which will be a Boolean called isFollowingUser. And if our following list contains, so we can use the .contains method for this, a given element, which as we mentioned is the user ID, then this will evaluate to true that we're already following them. And again, we want to just return from the for each. And finally, else, we want to pass our user to our user result, so our results are displayed similarly to how they were in our search. So we'll pass in user to user result and store that in a variable called user result. Then we can finally say at the very end, user results.add user result. So we've got a list of user result widgets to display. How are we going to actually present them in our UI? Well, we're just going to return a container, and we'll give this container a color of our accent color, so theme.ofContext accent color with the opacity 0.2. Then for its child, we can put everything within a single column, or for its children, we'll first have a container. And in this container, we're basically just going to have an icon and a title. So we're going to set padding on all sides to 12. Then we'll have a child of a row, where to center it horizontally, we'll set main axis alignment to main axis alignment.center. Then the first child, the item on the left, will be our icon. The icon will be icons.personAdd. The color of it, our primary color. The size will be 30. Then we'll have a sized box to separate it a bit from the text. So we'll set width to 8.0. And then the text widget with the text users to follow. And for the style, we'll set the color also to our primary color, and the font size also to 30. And then after our closing container parenthesis, we'll have a column, and this is where we'll display our user results as its children. So user results will be set to children. And now that we've created our build users to follow function, let's take a look at the result. And first of all, make sure that where you're returning container is not within your for each. So it looks like I have my container being returned where we're iterating over documents. So I'm going to need to highlight all of that, the entire container, and move it down outside of the for each. And now we can save and do a hot restart. And if we look at our timeline once again, we see our users to follow area. So since we're displaying our user results, we can tap on that user and see more about them and go back if we want. But note that our list of users to follow doesn't include ourselves, and it won't include any users that we've already followed. So if we follow this user, and we'll need to refresh, now he's been removed from the users to follow list. And since we're updating that list in real time, there'll be a constant list of users to follow coming into it. And another thing I want to add before we finish this video is that it's highly likely that you'll want to see your own posts as well as the posts of the users that you're following. So to add them, to add your own post to your feed, when the user signs up in Home and when we create our user in Firestore, we'll head to the Create User in Firestore function, and right where we're setting data, we'll also want to make the new user their own follower to include their posts in their timeline. So here we'll await followers ref and the document of user.id for the current user, the collection user followers, and the document of user ID again, and then set data to an empty map. So once this is added, for any new user that signs up, they're going to be able to see their own posts in their timeline.